Good evening. I'm Maria Murphy, and I'm the Associate Director at the Center for Research in Feminist, Queer, and Transgender Studies here at Penn. I'd like to begin our event today with a land acknowledgement. In an effort to recognize both the historical and ongoing practices of colonization, we wish to affirm that the FQT Center and Program in Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies at the University of Pennsylvania occupies the traditional unceded lands of the Lenni Lenape. We wish to acknowledge the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together in this community that, while virtual today, is based out of Philadelphia. Our year at the center, dedicated to care work, is part of an ongoing effort to recognize our own individual and institutional place in settler colonialism, and to better understand the relationship between Indigenous knowledges, care practices for land, water, and language, and relations with and within the environment by engaging these ideas alongside other labors of care, broadly conceived, throughout the year. Our gathering today also marks the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, a day instituted by the Canadian federal government intended to honor the lost children and survivors of residential schools, their families, and their communities. While reconciliation, of course, cannot be limited to one day, September 30th commemorates those harmed by the residential school system, and it provides an opportunity, if you haven't already, to read the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and support the efforts to implement the 94 calls to action. Thank you. It is my true pleasure to introduce our guest today. Jeremy is actually coming from another event, so he's running a little bit late, but so he will miss my introduction of him, but I think he knows how much I'm a fan. Okay, it is truly my pleasure to introduce our two guests today, Jeremy Dutcher and Lee Veeraraghavan, who we have with us thanks to generous support from the Sachs Program for Arts Innovation, the Department of Music, Native American and Indigenous Studies at Penn, and a University Research Foundation impact grant. At the center, we initially invited Jeremy, actually as part of last year, which was dedicated to environmental feminisms, recognizing how his musical practice takes up water protection, land back initiatives, and anti-pipeline activism against extractive industries. But of course, his work as a performer, composer, and archival researcher has also made crucial contributions to care work around language revitalization and the unlearning of practices and understandings of gender and sexuality under settler coloniality. Jeremy is a member of the Tobique First Nation and a two-spirit composer, performer, and activist. His debut album, Wolastoqiyik Lintuwakonawa, from 2018, created a cross-generational and ancestral dialogue at the intersection of opera, electro-pop, and traditional Wolastoq songs, which Jeremy transcribed and arranged from wax cylinder recordings. He has created an acoustic performance set for us tonight from his album tracks with 3 truly creative and unique covers that I know everyone will enjoy. Joining Jeremy for this pre-concert interview tonight is Lee Veeraraghavan, who is currently a visiting assistant professor at Tulane University. Her research explores the ways that the nation is built through the ear, focusing on contemporary practices that produce and maintain settler colonialism in Canada. Her dissertation was an ecomusicological study based on fieldwork among radical environmentalists and Indigenous sovereigntists who are trying to prevent oil and gas pipeline development on Canada's west coast. She's also working on a second book project on music, trauma, and the medicalized subject that explores how conflicting approaches to sublimating trauma are mobilized by governmental institutions. Okay, looks like I will bring on Lee and Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy. I'm so happy to see you both. And I really can't believe that this event is finally happening after COVID prevented you so many times from recording this concert. So I feel very grateful that, that this came to fruition.
Me too. Oh my God, it's so nice to be here with you. I wish I could be there in person so we could embrace and
that would be great.
all that, but we'll have to save it for another time when I make it through Philly. But yeah, I think I'm so happy to share this music in some kind of, like, you know, electronic format, and Yeah, right now, currently, I'm on the East Coast. I'm literally in my parents' like basement right now. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here with you and have a little discussion here with Lee. It's very nice to meet you as well.
Amazing to meet you, Jeremy.
I will
So
leave
I
you to it.
oh, geez. Okay.
Oh,
Well, yeah, I'm really, really thrilled and honored to be able to talk to you today and to like ask you to talk with us about this beautiful concert that you've put together. Um, a preface. So one of the feelings that I associate with your performances is what I'll describe as this overwhelming rush of being taken by surprise. Um, so something happens in the recorded tracks of your album, Wolastoqiyik Lintuwakonawa. Spoil if you haven't yet heard it, but you must go and listen to it as soon as this is over. However, that moment it provokes sort of a small moment of confusion, and then recognition, and then you realize that nothing has been as it seems. And I think that's the magic of it all. But in order to produce these effects, I understand that there was a really long process of germination. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the work that you did, both through your formal studies, also at the encouragement of members of your Wolastoq community, and then, of course, what I assume were very long hours spent alone in the archives to craft these songs.
yeah. No, I'm so happy to talk about process because I really do believe that um, that's where the work lives. The work lives in the process. So um, the process that has led to that first album was a super long one. I sometimes say like, yeah, it took me 28 years to write that album, since I was a baby. Because the sort of lane in which I find my work is one which has kind of been set for me my whole life. You know what I'm saying? It's like I come from a family of knowledge keepers and song carriers, and so yeah, that was kind of always important for us coming up. Was that song was at the center of the ways that we gathered as community here in Wolastoq. So yeah, for me it was difficult the first time that I had to leave our our home territory, and I moved to Jiboktok in Mi'kmaq territory, or what's known sometimes as Halifax, and that's where I went and I studied sort of classical music and that sort of Western art music tradition. I gotta stop saying classical music because also this is a term that I'm trying to problematize all the time because it's like who's classics? Everybody's got classics, Let's talk about. So I like to use the phrase Western art music because I think it's actually locating it rather than yeah, we're going to get into a discussion of settler colonialism and sort of white supremacy in music, and I think even how we name, classical music is one of those sites, where we can really start to unpack what we're actually talking about, because it's like, and I guess I came to understand this through my own journey because I had those two kind of trainings, both the traditional training and the like more sort of classical training. Oh God, there I go again. It's a hard one to break for sure, but so these traditions are kind of dancing towards each other, and at least in my experience, and even though they can seem very sort of separate, as very much coming from two distinctly different worlds, and they are. But also, I think there's connectivity in those ways of sharing music. Like our traditional songs are so embodied. When you to sing those songs, you have to take the deepest breath and sing with the most clarity as possible. And it's the same thing in classical music style. So for me, the world seemed foreign at the start, but the more that I got into it, the more I realized that they're actually speaking in the same way and kind of going in the same direction, which is like a deep spirit place. So yeah, I guess for me, my journey through music, especially in that time when I was living in Halifax and going to music school, it was tumultuous because I was trying to figure out how do I um, find a way to marry this beautiful music that I know has value, um, and bring that into a world which doesn't respect it.
Right.
and doesn't give it its adequate space. You know, the ways I heard our music talked about in sort of music institutions was very degrading. You know, it was very did not place us at the same level. It was like, oh well, there's this like canon of like the greats, and then there's folk music.
Right.
You know, and it's like, well, I'm gonna have to stop you there because it's like this is not reflective of what I see when I look at the kinds of pedigree, the kinds of training that's required for our traditional music, the kinds of the breadth of that our song carriers need to know, you know, and the kinds of anyway. So I think I'm getting a little off track, so I just want to pull it back to say that like you know, it's I had a hard time trying to balance those identities and those worlds. But I really think when I started to infuse our traditional songs into that, like it was for my final recital, and I decided to just I was kind of sitting in the practice rooms at the piano and like singing on my traditional songs, you know, like kind of like how we used to do, and like just courting along, seeing what fit, what didn't fit, like kind of I became kind of obsessed with like what is our tonality? Like what are the ways in which sound as a Wolastoqiyik, as a Wolastoq person, what are the ways that sound good to me? And letting that be the guide rather than, you know, thinking about the harmonic structure or any of that, you know, it's like that's all noise. Just like know that you have beautiful songs and follow that beauty as far as you can. So for me, that was like and then that's sort of the starting place of how I started to marry those two worlds together. And it was really beautifully received, you know, like a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my teachers said, wow, you know, you got to keep doing what you're doing. That's really cool. So part of the thesis work that I was doing, I decided to take a look at our music carriers, our song people, and I went out and I started to do field work and interviews with them. And you know, these are like family friends. People, I even interviewed my mom, you know, because she's a singer too. So these are like just people in my community. And there was one particular woman. She's a song carrier. She lives here in Fredericton, and her name is Maggie Paul. And you can actually hear Maggie Paul's voice on the record. I put her on track number 3, I believe, in which I actually used that field recording of that interview that we did together and put it right on the record because she said something so beautiful. She was talking about song as the catalyst of cultural revitalization more broadly. So talking about, you know, when we bring our songs back, then we bring our dances back, and then we bring the ways that we gather back. And then all of that comes back and it's all sort of, but it begins with the song, you know? And so for me, you know, I'm a bit biased, I guess, but as a music maker, I thought that's it, you know, that's it. It starts with the song and she knew that I was really, really interested in like the traditional ways that we make music. And so she said, well, if you really want to know the old, like the old song, you can't even stay around here in New Brunswick. You have to go to the museum. And so this kind of set me on this path. And, you know, I always say like, being a young Indigenous person, you know, is a lot about just kind of doing what your elders tell you to do.
Okay.
You know? Well, for me anyway, this is how, you know, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but this is just like how it works in the East here. It's like those knowledge keepers, they direct us and they tell us where to go, and they don't always do it in the most like pointed way. So, for example, like in that conversation, she said, you know, all those wax cylinders, all those old songs, they live in that museum. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if somebody went and brought those back to our people? You know, just me as this little young student being like, yeah, that would be nice. Kind of not realizing that, oh yeah, she meant me. I got do that now. Because I think often too, like I've talked to other young people about this, but it's like when those elders drop those gifts and they ask us to do something for them, it can be really it can freeze us. Like we can stop and we don't feel like we are the right person, or we don't feel like we have enough time, or whatever it is. You know, there's always something to put in the way of the gift that we're given. And luckily, I guess I just didn't listen to that voice, and I decided that okay, this is what needs to be done. I've been requested to do this by my elders, so let's go. So I put in a little grant for the Canada Council. I went to Ottawa, where this museum is, and I actually got to sit, for 2 weeks, with the whole archive of my people. And it's not just songs too. Like there were over 110 songs that were collected, basically from 1903 to 1911. So kind of like 110 years ago, maybe even more now. Wow. And so there were over 100 songs, but also not just songs, but also photographs and like field notes and like little dictionaries, and like this guy was trying to learn our language and stuff. So for me, it was like a really
William Ashling?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I give him thanks too much, but I don't give him too much credit.
Well, oh my God, that's such a rich answer, and I feel like it touches on all of these questions that I prepared. And I guess I'll just ask this other one, and we'll see where it goes. But one of the things that I also really feel strongly comes through in your work is a sense of the fullness of time. And so, we've talked already about the time to germination of the project, but there is also, of course, the voices of your ancestors singing in the present, and the use of your language and songs as a living legacy for the future. But today in this concert, you've offered us some covers that all speak to some different aspect of time. So the first cover looks with hopeful conviction toward the future. The second one commands and instructs us to remember in a certain way. And the third one talks about us now and how we are moving forward. So I was wondering if you could talk about these choices.
This is like a fun game. I'm going to try to figure out what we're talking about.
So I didn't want to name them because
you don't want to spoil it for the audience, or what?
Yeah.
What okay.
But you know what? I think you can spoil your own concert. That's cool.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll pick up the question first, and then we'll jump back to the covers after. Because what you picked up on was like it's really astute, and it's really kind of exactly how I thought about this work. And I guess how I think about song now more generally, because when we're talking about an oral tradition, that is like our people, our written language is super new. It's maybe only less than 30 years old. So, right, like my mom speaks, like my grandmother spoke, but they didn't write. So kind of we're the first generation that's picking up the pen and kind of writing it down, which is a lot of fun, but also a lot of work. But because that language has been oral for so long, the role of what a song even is takes on a different character in that context. You know what I'm saying? Because song then is not about entertainment. It's not about like, oh, we go to a concert and we listen to a song and isn't that nice? But it's more about the soundtrack to our daily lives, our activities, and singing with action, and also passing on our cultural values, who we are as people. And that can be everything. That can be our laws, that can be how we are to marry each other, or how we relate to each other, or don't sleep with your cousin, or there's like all of these like teachings within those songs. I don't know why that.
Which song is the one about sleeping with your cousin?
I don't even.
Okay.
I think I gotta write that one now. That's but that's exactly right too, because I have to understand, like, and we have to place ourselves in a continuum of artistic creators as Indigenous people. Like, we can create songs, we're not stuck in a moment, and just because we're traditional singers doesn't mean like our traditions don't live. And that's what I hope that all the time when I'm talking to our young people is reinforcing this idea that you are the generation that's carrying our bundles. It's not like our traditions and our culture is up here and we need to like it's only for ceremony times, or it's only for when we want to talk to our allies or get them on board. No, it's like every day, it's every moment. And so how do we shape every moment with that understanding that those songs are much more than just songs? They are re-inscribing all of the time our worldview. And so when we start to think about songs in this way, I think it takes on a little bit of a different color, right? And that's why for me, it was really important to speak across time and bring those old messages forward, because we lost a lot. Like, I think when we think about the history of colonization, I'll just give you a brief example about like east to west and how it kind of works in Canada anyway, in a Canadian context. So I'm a member, and my family comes from Tobique First Nation. We call Negutko, but in English they say Tobique First Nation. And there's usually a number that comes after that too, and it's Tobique 20. And why it's 20 is because it was the 20th reserve that was ever created in Canada. And it was created in the mid-1800s. And so what my mom always says, she says, like, my son, we bore the brunt. On the East Coast, we bore the brunt of colonization. So when we look at that number, Tobique 20, in the mid-1800s, let's think about Canada's expansion and the West Coast. Mm-hmm. So non-Indigenous people didn't even get to the West Coast until after that. So we on the East Coast were already living in reserves, tightly controlled, tightly restricted, couldn't practice our culture, our songs, and all that. And they didn't even get to the West Coast yet. So it's like there's like a almost 200-year lag time between that real assimilation power that was put on our peoples. So, and this bears out in where we are today too, because I'll never forget. I went to the West Coast, and some kids from their nations, they came up and started speaking to me just because they assumed that I was like part of their nation. But they spoke in language. They spoke in their language, and they were playing in their language. And this is the first time I'd ever seen that before, because our language tradition is so suppressed here on the East Coast, and we've lost so much. And it's a very important day. I don't know if it was planned this way, but like, it's a very important day for our people today. We had our day of National Truth and Reconciliation, because we're trying to figure out what to do, figure out a better way forward, because we've just been choosing wrong for the last 500 years. And I think we have an actual moment to choose right,
Could I?
Of course.
Who is included in that we, who has been choosing wrong for 500 years, seems to be a good question. But also, like, I feel like what you're inviting us to do with your music is to turn that into a real collective we. How do we all move forward?
Yeah, totally. I think, I like try to stay with that collectivity as much as possible. I think it's really, 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 really easy to slip into, I guess they call it tribalism in English, but I don't like this term. I think it's kind of, but like this us versus them mentality, antagonism and fear. And I think what I go back to all the time is like our traditions, all of our traditions are rooted in love. And that's the opposite of fear. So that when we talk about there's no separation. There's no separation. Our elders say, like, we are all brothers and sisters. We are all kin. And so we're all here for a reason. And so when I say we've been choosing wrong, we've all been choosing wrong. This is not to say that we've equally been choosing wrong. You know what I'm saying? That's not to say that, like, our people did not steal babies and put them in institutions and kill a bunch of them. And this is not humane activity. Our traditions and our way of thinking is oriented in life and love. And so what I will say is, like, it's a shared burden, but it's not an equal burden. And I think there's certain communities that need to step up and be taking serious accountability in this moment and thinking about reparations and how we can make it better. And I hope that we can take this moment and this time with these discoveries of these baby ancestors to actually have a moment of lucidity, and really think about what that pathway forward is, right? Because it's always been a welcome song from our side. We have like, oh, and this is like when I started to get into this archive work, you really start to dig into like those early interactions. I got obsessed with like, and this is, I guess, why this album took so damn long, was because I like just got obsessed with all the intricate histories of that interaction between Western peoples and Indigenous peoples. And I read some of the first accounts of when Europeans arrived on this shore, because they met my ancestors, you know? So I was really keen to like, well, what was that like? Like, how did we treat them? And there's this beautiful account to say that like when those first ships came to shore, we sent all of our women down into the water to greet them. And they stroked their arms and they sang them welcome songs. And I just thought that was the most beautiful thing in the world. And it's kind of, it's like still that way too, you know, which really like, it just brings me so much joy and hope for the future, because, you know, I'm not sure like what the knowledge of our political context is down south, but if people are tuned in, they might have heard about the lobster fishery antagonism that's happening on the East Coast between the Mi'kmaq fishers and like Acadian commercial fishers. So there's kind of like last summer and continuing this summer, there was this big kind of battle, I guess, because the non-natives didn't want us to be fishing outside of their season. So anyway, you know, these protests got really heated. You know, there was a lot of vitriol, a lot of swearing, and a lot of like shouting. And thankfully, it didn't get too well. There was stuff burnt down, but it didn't get too physically violent. No loss of life. But you know, and I was in, you know, Montreal at the time. I was on tour. It was like it was a different time. But you know what I saw when I checked social media, and these Acadian fishers were swearing and shouting, and they hated us. And you know what? Our women stood in front and they sang songs. And that's how they met that aggression. So for me, that welcome song it's never changed, you know? And I think now we're in a moment where a lot of allies, a lot of settlers, a lot of newcomers are now starting to catch wise to that. You know, like we put them through hell and they still welcome us? How is that possible? And they're like, well, maybe these people got something. Maybe they got an understanding that we don't have. And that was always the thing, you know, it was like they just showed up here and they thought we had nothing to teach them.
Oh my God, this is so rich, and I want to, you know, continue teasing threads out for ages, but
anything, I'm here.
I mean, I love that this idea that, you know, you really, when you do the thing that you are meant to do, like that is such a powerful thing. And like I think there's something about like being yourself and finding your voice in that, but also there's something about you know, I mean, it shows like how the songs really make it possible to sort of do the right thing in a way, and sort of like be, you know, Wolastoq, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, like to be oneself. Anyway, I'm nattering on. But I do want to ask one more question before we go to the concert, which I'm so excited for everyone to hear, because I think you will experience a lot of what Jeremy has just been talking about in it. But you've mentioned in a previous interviews that I've seen with you, establishing a space back home for Wolastoq culture to be said in its own terms. Obviously, this is a huge undertaking, and I was wondering how it's going, and also how those of us who are affiliated with institutions of higher learning and presumably hefty endowments might be helpful to you and other Indigenous people who take on similar projects.
Money and space and land back, for sure. You know, I think here I can only speak for, you know, my local context here, but the University of New Brunswick, they're one of the largest landholders in the province. So, and we need these lands, you know, we need to be taking care of these lands. This is what we've been doing for a really long time. And right now is the moment where we need to be building institutions as Indigenous people, because all of that was stripped away. And so I'm really excited about the work that's happening right now. And this is kind of the generation that there's a huge turn that's happening away from this, acknowledging the pain that has existed and the hardships that we have, but also rooting the work that needs to happen in love and in our ways and in our languages. And I think that's actually going to be a huge shift when we stop assimilating ourselves to fit into the narrative or try to be at the table, and just instead insist on our ways and let other people learn from that. Because I think that's how we do it. I know that's how we're gonna get to a place where our humanity is respected. Because I think it's just about dignity at the end of the day, and I hope to whatever, like, we don't extend dignity to anyone. It's inalienable. It's within us. It cannot be taken. But I think with what I had hoped to do and what I hope to continue to do is just to reflect the beauty of my people back to themselves, And for me, the most beautiful that I've ever seen my people is in those wax cylinders, is hearing those voices, hearing them laugh, hearing their stories, hearing them. You can hear them dance. It's amazing. So, I think for me, there's a huge sense of responsibility to go and share that work, because not everyone had a Maggie Paul, not everyone had an elder to sit with them and guide them and show them the way. But a lot of people do have Spotify, and a lot of people do have a YouTube, and a lot of people can, engage our culture still from afar, and if they really truly see how beautiful they are, I hope that's going to start a fire that's going to catch really, really far. So, like I was talking about institutions, I think this cannot be understated, because I'm here in the province of New Brunswick, and I think there are over 150 French language schools, which is the second language here in the province, and there are currently 0 Indigenous language schools in the province. And so, we don't have to look very hard to understand why our culture and our language is severely endangered and in a really hard place. It's because we don't have the spaces in which we can come and gather. And because we are still healing and surviving this like deep trauma that settler colonialism has enforced on our people. I think like this generation is that first generation where that trauma was kind of held back. Like, we're the first generation that didn't go to these fucking schools and we're university here, right? We can do whatever we want.
Seems appropriate. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I gotta speak truthfully. But there's a certain sense of like because we didn't have that direct trauma of like being strapped for speaking our language, or like we didn't have the resources to keep it strong, but at least we didn't have the trauma.
Right.
So I really feel like now we're in a moment where you have the potential to kind of teach 2 generations at once, because we have among my cohort, not a lot of people speak the language, and a lot of people my age are having, little babies now, so as long as we can like get the people my age to humble themselves enough to start at that level like babies, then I think we have a real possibility to save our language and to make it really strong for the next generation. So those kind of intergenerational learning opportunities are really important. But like you were talking about, like through time is really important too, and understanding that we are connected to ancestors and that we will also be ancestors to people as well. And so I think that equips us with a really great sense of responsibility and a great sense of like what needs to be done in this moment right now to clear the path and clear the way. So for me, when we talk about institutions, I'm thinking a lot about like not just like language schools. Yeah, that's a huge part of it, and I would love to see that. And my mom is actually working on it right now. So actually, I should do a little plug. Ngak Iman is her language program, and there is a what do you call this? A GoFundMe page that if you want to support, you can absolutely do that. So she's doing that work. It's really, really important for me because I worked a lot in museums and around repatriation of our material. I would love to see like a cultural space in which these could be housed, like our bring our things home. Because that for me is like one of the hardest parts about going into that institution, into the archive space, was because the walls and the stacks, they talk to you, at least me anyway, because like so many of those objects, and I speak about it in that way very specifically, objects, because in my worldview they are not objects, but they have been objectified when they are taken from community and put in a basement or behind a glass pane, and not touched by people, you know. We believe that like all of our drums and our rattles and our implements and our clothing, they have life. They are living things. And so I have started to see the museum as a bit of like a incarceral space, you know, like a prison space in which those relatives of ours are being held. And so I would like to see in my lifetime the rematriation or the coming home of our relatives, you know, because they're still sitting there, you know, they're still there. Our canoes, even our drums, our clothes, all of that. So I would really like to see that come back to our people, because I think then it will give our children a chance to actually engage it in a real way. Like not everyone has the privilege to like go to university, like write a grant, get a degree, go to Ottawa, do the research, and like that's a lot. And I did it. So like we don't need to keep reinventing the wheel. We just need more accessible resources for our young people, so that we can ensure our survivance. So maybe I'll just leave it there, and we'll get to the concert.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeremy. It's incredible to talk to you.
It's really nice to talk to you, Julie. Your questions were so thoughtful and beautiful. I really appreciate that.
I just want to also extend my thanks, and I put a link for the GoFundMe, Jeremy, in the chat. So hopefully folks will check that out and share it. And I will, I'll put on the concert. So please enjoy.
Bye.
Lintuwakonawa, Luitazo, Aswanige. Oh. That's the way get a whistle. Need Lintuwakonawa Luitahazo. Lintuwakonawa Ligizizagamawi. Okay, net Lintuwakonawa Wolastoqiyik. Welcome, Sam. Aho. Did you know that love is the most important thing in the world? I think so too. So this is called a love song. It's called Gazelle Wintuwagen. Baskin talamin elmi know that I do believe that we'll walk hand in hand someday. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Here in my heart, you know that I do believe we shall overcome someday. Thy hand, Belinda, darkness shades me on thy bosom. Let me rest. More I would, but death invades me. Death is now a welcome guest. When I am laid in earth, may my wrongs create no trouble in thy breast. When I am laid in earth, may my wrongs create no trouble in thy breast. Remember me, remember me, but forget my fate. Remember me, but forget my fate. Kulazi gumanen eliskijin ultiek. Kutona bem nog magwahatine. Kulazi gumanen dan wadebek sultiek. Kutona bem nog wajo kem doltine. Wajo kem doltine elibuadik kisilinok. Yutskidkemik. It's called the honor song. Kullazit kudmanen eliskijin otiek dalna bemma magwahatine Kullazit kudmanen daluena mexotiek dalna bemma wajokem dotine elibawade gizi ulino yud skitgami Tahu. Kwepsidawan, thank you so much for having me. The last song I want to share with you is not one of my songs, but it's a song by a queer trans forebearer named Beverly Glenn Copeland. And this is a song called Ever New. the spring and the summer rain softly turn to sing again. Welcome the bud and the summer blooming flowers. Welcome the child whose hand I hold. Welcome to you, both young and old. We are ever new. We are ever new. Welcome the spring and the summer rain softly turn to sing again. Welcome the bud and the summer blooming flowers. Welcome the child whose hand I hold. Welcome to you, both young and old. We are ever new. We are ever Tahoe.